Hey watch friends, as promised ahead of the launch of this one, the Zelos Spearfish GMT on December 13th of 2022, this third installment here previously did an unboxing as well as did the full review of this one. But I wanted to come back and do some comparisons in a little more depth between the Spearfish and the Spearfish GMT, because there are a fair amount of differences. But additionally, I do have actually a bonus just off of camera here. I actually have 9 other watches that we'll go ahead and pull in so you can see comparison here, just to get a better feel for the watch and the overall characteristics. So first, just I'm going ahead and diving in. This one's the original, as you can see, of course, 3-hand configuration. This latest, as the name would denote, is the Spearfish GMT, so it is a 4-hander. Of course, has that addition of the GMT hand, and it comes along with some other differences. The biggest difference between these two is going to be the movement. This one was actually the debut for the brand, and I believe still the only time that they've used the LJP G100 movement, whereas this one is a Sellita SW330-2, which I believe is a first for the brand as well. So both really kind of debuts and showcase, which is really what the Spearfish has been designed to be. So with that though, there are different characteristics that come with them. This one has a phenomenal power reserve at 68 hours, so I mean just incredible there. By picking the Dash 2 on this variant, it actually did kick up the power reserve as well, so instead of getting the standard 38, 40, 42, somewhere there about, this one comes in at 56. So it's a fair drop, half a day drop between these two, however it still is a really good power reserve. Additionally though, because this is a Miyota-based movement from LJP, same ownership there, this one is unidirectional for the rotor winding, and as a result you get some of that loud rotor spin, whereas this one is a bidirectional similar to the other, the SW200s and such. So with being bidirectional, it is a much quieter rotor, so that's nice as well, and we'll look at the case back and check out the movements. The price is going to come with a difference as well. This movement is actually a fair amount costlier, and as a result, this bumped up $200 in price, coming in at around $850 at launch, whereas this is coming in at $650. The bezels. This is one of the big differences. So first, before we flip them around here, the inserts. As you can see, this one was actually available in 2 configurations. We're looking at the 12-hour variant today, but there's also a die bezel. This one is just going to be a 24-hour bezel, and that of course is in keeping with the GMT. 60 clicks on this one, 48 clicks on that, sorry about that, knocking the camera around. 48 clicks on this one here, which is a little more in keeping again with the GMT styling for that. The bezel inserts themselves are going to be noticeably different as well. So first you have the fact that this is ceramic and this is going to be sapphire. This is a brushed finish, and with being sapphire, it's more of a polished style finish as well. But additionally, as you can see here, the lume application, and it's true on other variants as well, but we're going to mostly focus on these two. This has C3 all the way around, whereas this carries forward with that light blue lume that you see applied to the handset as well. So with that difference there, that does make a pretty dramatic difference as far as the overall aesthetic beyond the accent colors. Let's go ahead and listen to that action though. I don't even know if the camera's picking that up. This one has almost no sound, very little feel, fair amount more play, but it is noticeably lighter. Conversely, ratchet on this one, it is definitely a more pronounced click. It has much better tactile feel. It has much less play. Across the board, unquestionably, this one is a bezel action improvement. This feels more like a well dialed in bearing type of system. This one feels a little looser, possibly softer springs. I'm not certain as far as the differentiation there, but it is definitely a noticeable difference. Aesthetically and overall dimensions, these are going to be the same in most regards, but where they do differ fairly considerably is going to be the thickness. When I say considerably though, it's important to keep in mind, and let's flip this around so we can really look kind of apples to apples there. Certainly the bezel, as you can see, is going to be thicker. Total, this is coming in at 1.5 roughly millimeters thicker here. So this is coming in at 11.9 millimeters total thickness, including the flat sapphire crystal, whereas this is coming in at 13.4. But as you can see though, the profile on this, I really don't think this one is exceptionally thin. Conversely, this one is what I would call about average. So, really, at the end of the day, while I did like the sveltness of this, it does carry through in the mid case, which in turn does make the bezel look a little taller. But the reality is, on wrist, I haven't actually really noticed too much of a difference at all, just because it is still a very reasonable overall thickness. So while I do like this one for some is going to be easier to grip and have those kind of things as well. But the biggest thing is, with incorporating 4-hander, you've got to increase the pinion length as well as fit that fourth hand on there. So as a result, the thickness comes with it. They put it into the bezel. No difference in the overall balance or feel. I really can't honestly tell if I close my eyes which one I have on wrist one way or the other there, unless I start feeling around, and then maybe I could tell. But that being said, as far as just the basic characteristics, not top heavy, nothing like that, at least in my experience. And part of that is owing to the weight is almost exactly the same on these. You're only looking at a 2 gram increase on the GMT, so still very, very similar overall, really not bad at all. Shifting back to the handset. The handset, as you can see, it's very reminiscent, of course, with the addition of the fourth. Part of what they changed, though, is here you can actually see the minute hand kisses the inner side of the chapter ring, whereas this actually falls a little bit short. And I believe the reason they did that is to incorporate that fourth hand, that GMT, and to be able to actually see that sitting proud. So as you can see, that rides slightly over the chapter ring. They tuck that back just a little more. I actually like when they kiss here with the chapter ring. That's my preferred, but this is close enough that it doesn't have any legibility impact or anything like that. So a pretty minor thing. And then, of course, on these two variants, the accent color is going to differ, obviously orange here, whereas it's a light blue accent on the two white offerings. Additionally, that does carry forward onto the dial itself, and then the accent color is actually on the GMT hand, which I will say, being used to seeing the accent color on the second hand for this, it has thrown me off, and I've actually looked a fair amount to the GMT hand as being the second hand until I realize it's not moving, and then that tells me what's going on there. But it's obviously a minor thing and only coming from one to the other here as far as the interplay. And then obviously the GMT hand, slender hand application, of course, there's no comparison for this one because there isn't that. The rest of the handset is going to be very, very comparable there. As far as the dials, the texture, as you can see, is significantly more pronounced on the new variant. Additionally, it has kind of like a silvery coloration to that. They call it a white, but it is really, I would say, somewhat of like a pearlescent kind of white coloration. Whereas as we shift over to the original in the white variant, that one was actually full lume. So that is consistent with, I believe, all other white dials, excepting maybe if you call the linen on the Nova a white dial. But with the white dials on Zelos, they generally are going to be full lume, and that is the case, as we'll see here momentarily, on the original Spearfish as well. So it really makes it present quite differently there between the two of those. So that is definitely something that's very, very noteworthy. As far as the clasps on these two, again, this is going to be something that's very different. This is on the right here on the original. This is the original style toolless micro that's consistent with the Mako and some others, different finishes, but the actual functional aspects. Whereas this is going to be the Vitesse, or however you pronounce that model. That is where this one was debuted. So they are completely different in terms of the actual application, but both of them are going to be toolless micro adjustments rather. As you can see here, difference in terms of the length and the overall profile, same thing with the finishing, kind of the polish, the pebble accents, but similar characteristics or similar aspects as well. As you look in here though, you can see this one just goes by lifting and sliding up, which I do think is preferable to this. This has become, I loved it when it came out, but this has become my least favorite of their toolless micro options. This one, you slide that lever over and then it goes in and out here. And it has a ratchet style for that. Ultimately it is still a very nice clasp. However, now that there are so many other options, I personally, I'm really torn, as I talked about in the full review, between this style. I like the aesthetic of this, but I probably prefer the function of the Aurora. Same thing is true. People like this end link is extended out there. You can see how that looks, nice clean look, whereas people don't prefer that on the Aurora. Honestly, it didn't bother me, but those are some of the differences there to hit that. Looking at the case backs, the case back is much more stylized on the newer version, the GMT. And part of that is that custom rotor, I should say. Most of that is that custom rotor. So obviously a different movement presentation, but that custom rotor, the subtle Geneva striping, the huge application of skeletonization, just really cool look as well. But that being said, the original was no slouch either. While it is more simplistic in its application, it does have a tungsten rotor, which gives a unique and cool color to that. And then additionally, it has its own decorations as well, albeit more subtle, but it is certainly differences there. Shifting back to the bracelets, did want to mention the quick release. Hugely minor thing here, which I guess somewhat a poor word choice there, but this is a very minor item. With the spring bars, you can see this is kind of the round head for that on the quick release spring bar. This still had the quick release spring bar, but you can see these were more of like a flat top or squared off for them. I do believe these sit a little more proud, and as a result, they are probably more likely to irritate your wrist. I haven't had any issues with either of them, but again, it is something worth noting. And then as we talked about, the lume. The lume application between both of these is going to be significantly different. Of course, with the original, you have the full lume dial, so that presents quite differently. But you additionally have a lot more application of the C3. The C3, though, does glow very similar, as we looked at in the full review, to the light blue lume that's applied to the GMT version as well. I really can't say that there's a clear winner here, but I will say for me personally, I do prefer the overall aesthetic when you're not looking at lume to the original, to the GMT variant as opposed to the full lume with its more subtle texture. I just think that this one has a lot more visual intrigue on it on the newer style with that additional depth, and for me, I have enough full lumes, it was worth trading off there. Alright, so there we have it as far as the watch itself and kind of comparing the models. But now let's just go ahead and quickly bring in a multitude of different other comps here. So trying to bring in as many white dials as I can. Here it is next to the Zelos NASA, and this is the Comet variant, which is white as well. And then there's just kind of the case profile to give you that aesthetic. Setting that one aside, here it is next to the Horizon GMT, and this is the V2, and you can see that box edge crystal and those kind of things, but look at the overall height of this. To me, I don't think it's that dramatically different. Part of that is on the crystal itself, but just as far as the visual aesthetics, this one looks like a smaller watch overall because despite being 40, it is so recessed in there in such a small dial by comparison that everyone thinks that this one, or I should say virtually everyone, thinks that this one wears a lot smaller than the 40 would denote. Bringing in another 40 and sticking with the light coloration, here it is next to the slate blue titanium Swordfish 40. And that gives you just an idea there. And then again, the overall case profile. Really, I don't think this looks much of any chunkier for that. It's a very subtle difference. In this, does have an undercut on the bezel, which partly offsets some of that, but different look there. Bringing in another brand, this is the RZE Fortitude, and this is, I believe, stated as 41 millimeters. And it just gives you an idea of the dial presence there, as well as the thickness. Then bringing in this is the Zelos Mako V3, and that's the meteorite. This one's been modified with a stainless steel bezel. And then there's, again, side profile. As you can see, this certainly, that's part of where I'm saying this is a fairly normal thickness. I've never found the Mako to be chunky by any means, and I think if you look at them next to each other, it gives you a better idea. Yeah, this is a little more sloped, this is a little more boxy, but total thickness, pretty comparable. Here it is next to a Dorenzo. This is the DRZ04 Mondao, and there's 40 as well, gives you another idea as far as a white fixed bezel configuration, and then total thickness. This one's a very svelte watch overall, and you can see the mid case actually looks visually a little slimmer on this one than it does this one, despite the fact that the overall, I believe, is pretty comparable. This one just has more of a relief cut, so it visually slims it down. There's that one. Then bringing in, this is one that has not been reviewed. I should mention, all of these have been reviewed on the channel if you want to learn more or check any of these out. This one's actually going to be coming up. This is a new one from Second Hour. This is their Saddleberg, and this is a 40 millimeter as well. And again, just sticking with the white theme, gives you an idea there, sizing, coloration. And then finally, these last two, I want to bring in less for direct comp as to see kind of dial variants. So this is a Venturine, which this one is going to be available in. This just gives you an idea here. You can see on the Mako, let's bring that back in. This is a similar color configuration to what you'll see on that one with the blue and yellow. So just gives you an idea of that yellow next to the Venturine, how that would kind of look there. But then similarly, I wanted to show as far as the just the Venturine effect, just to kind of help give you a visual there. And then in the same idea, here it is next to Meteorite, and this is a natural Meteorite with the blued hardware, again on a Zelos Nova, so those last two are Zelos Novas, and just gives you an idea there. Alright, so that pretty much wraps it up as far as just hopefully giving you a better idea as you prepare potentially to grab one of these if you're debating about colorways or you're not sure about the size or any kind of attributes there. This hopefully gives you a better feel in kind of wrapping things up. I know we've already seen it throughout, but here it is again on my wrist. It's no longer size because of the micro there, but you can see really not a thick watch in my opinion at all. It just looks comparatively thicker because that Spearfish is so slim. So I hope this video has been helpful for you as we have the dog telling me it's time here. So if you did enjoy this, please do hit that like button. Additionally, if you haven't done so already, give that subscribe button a tap. Thanks for watching.